105 million Filipinos are Catholic. That didn't start in Manila, it didn't start in Rome, it started in Cebu. One morning in 1521, when a wooden cross and a wooden statue of a child, the physical evidence of that moment is still standing. A 460-year-old fort, a house held together by coral and egg whites, a museum in the home of the first Filipino bishop in history. All are in within a 10-minute walk, and I finally went to find out what it all means. Hi, my name is Trinidad, I'm 24 years old, and I've been living in Cebu City for 4 years. I make videos to help foreigners figure out if Cebu City is actually a place they'd want to live or simply visit. And if you're seriously thinking about moving here, understanding the history of the city you're considering matters. So in this video, I'll be walking you through 6 of Cebu's most important historical sites, what each one is, what it costs to get in, and what the history means in plain terms. If you want more videos like this about Cebu, not just a tourist version, subscribe to the channel. I make 1 to 2 videos a week on what it looks and feels like to live here. Now let's start at the beginning. This is the heritage of Cebu Monument, and before I tell you anything about it, just look at it. A sculptor named Eduardo Castillo built this between 1997 and 2000. He's a national artist, the same name behind some of the most recognized public monuments in this country. What he made here isn't decoration, it's compression. 500 years of Cebuano history poured into concrete, bronze, and steel, all layered into one structure. Every major point that shaped this island is literally carved in. The 1521 Battle of Mactan, Magellan's Cross, President Sergio Osmeña, the only Cebuano to ever leave the Philippines. If you only have 5 minutes to understand Cebu's past, you stand right here. Everything else on this tour is walking inside the pages. But there's one layer most people miss, and it's the ground you're standing on. This is Plaza Parian. During the Spanish colonial era, Parian wasn't just a neighborhood. It was the Beverly Hills of Cebu. The Chinese mestizo merchant class, the traders who controlled the local economy, this is exactly where they lived. This is where the money moves. So, the monument telling 500 years of Cebu history is standing in the exact neighborhood that drove 200 of those years. The entry cost is free since it is a public park and it is open 24/7. So there really is no reason for you to skip this monument.
Okay, Mom, so what do you think of Cologne Street or just Cebu in general?
So far, I'm embracing the culture. I'm embracing the difference. I like it. I like it.
What about Cologne Street? Because this is the oldest street in the Philippines.
So, to me, it's giving me a vibe of a little bit that I know of San Francisco, Mission Street, Tijuana, Mexico, and DF.
Just wanted to give her like a cultural experience of what it is living here in Cebu City, both for a local standpoint, but also what I've been doing here for the past 4 years. And I'm being honest with you guys, I haven't been to Cologne Street besides school in like a long time. So me coming back to when I first started my YouTube channel feels very nostalgic, and compared to when I did this video in the past, the streets are a lot cleaner, it's more organized as well, and there's a lot more ukay spots, so I should probably definitely thrift through because I do like thrifting.
From the Heritage Monument, it's a short walk to the 2 sites that started everything, Magellan's Cross and the Basilica Minore de Santo Niño. Here's a summarized version of the history. Back in 1521, Ferdinand Magellan arrives in Cebu. He's actually Portuguese, but he's sailing under Spain's flag. He makes contact with the local ruler, Raja Humabon. They form an alliance. To mark the conversion of Humabon and his people to Catholicism, Magellan plants a large wooden cross into the ground. In addition to this, he also gives Humabon's wife, Queen Juana a gift, which is a small wooden statue of a Jesus child. This statue is also known as Santo Niño. So this site right here is the ground zero of Christianity in Asia, not just the Philippines, but in Asia. Now about this cross, the one you're seeing inside the pavilion. It's hollow. The original Magellan's cross is sealed inside a second cross, encased in it for protection. The reason why is because people kept breaking off pieces of the original cross to keep it as a religious relic. They actually did that for several decades until there was almost nothing left. So what you're looking at is essentially a protective shell built around a 500-year-old artifact. And while everyone is staring at this cross, almost nobody ever looks up. The ceiling has paintings depicting the baptism of Raja Humabon's wife, among other things. And most people just walk in, photograph the cross, and then leave without ever seeing the mural that's above. And right behind the cross is the Basilica Minore de Santo Niño, which is the oldest Roman Catholic church in the Philippines, built in 1565, and the Santo Niño statue inside, which is the same wooden figure that Magellan gave Queen Juana in 1521. But here's a story that turns this from a museum piece into something else entirely. When Spanish forces returned to Cebu in 1565 and burned the local village to the ground, a soldier found that Santo Niño statue was completely unscathed inside a wooden box in the middle of all the ash. Cebuanos have treated it as miraculous ever since. That's why the Sinulog Festival exists, which is the biggest festival in all of the Philippines. And that's why the Basilica draws more daily visitors than almost anywhere else in the Philippines. It's not just a church. It's the reason this city exists the way it does. Both of these sites are free. There are no tickets or reservations, but if you want the real experience, be here around 8 in the morning. Before the crowd arrives, Sunog candle vendors set up outside doing ritual dance prayers. From the Basilica, it's a 10-minute walk towards Pier 1. And when these walls come up into view, you'll know you found it. 44 years after Magellan planted that cross, Spain sends Miguel Lopez de Legazpi to make the colonization official. Legazpi becomes the first Spanish governor general of the Philippines. The first thing he does is builds this fort near the water to protect the new settlement from raiders and hostile ships. What Legazpi built in 1565 started as a wooden stockade. The stone structure you're looking at today, the coral stone walls, the 3 bastions, was the official version that was built in 1738. However, the fort has been at this exact spot since the beginning. This is the oldest and smallest triangular bastion fort in the Philippines. 3 bastions, each with a name: San Miguel, La Concepcion, San Ignacio, using the original coral stone construction, are all still intact after 460 years later. The evolution of what this fort was used for started in this exact order. First, it was a Spanish military garrison. Then it was a Filipino revolutionary stronghold during the revolt against Spain. From there, it was the American Army camp during the occupation, and then the Japanese prison camp, which was held during World War II. And at some point in the 20th century, it was a mini zoo. Its walls were manned by Spanish conquistadors, Filipino freedom fighters, American soldiers, and Japanese forces in that exact order. 4 different flags, 4 different definitions of who is in control, all of them stood right here. The entrance fee per person is 30 pesos. However, if you are a student or senior citizen, then you can get a discount. Just ask the guard in front. From here, you'll head back to Parian. It's the same neighborhood that we started at the beginning of this video, the Beverly Hills of colonial Cebu. We'll be visiting a Chinese mestizo trader's home. In this area, you'll find that this is the Yap-Sandiego Ancestral House, built somewhere between 1675 to 1700, living in Spanish colonial Philippines, building their home in the district where their community was contained. What they built is unlike anything else on this tour. 3 cultures, 1 structure. The way their rooms are arranged, that's Chinese design thinking. Then you have the Philippine premium hardwoods on the upper floors and interiors, such as the malave, balayong, woods that take centuries to decay. And last but not least, the Spanish clay roof tiles on top. However, for the lower part of the walls, you have coral stone, held together by mortar mixed with egg whites. Yes, you heard me right. Not cement, but egg whites. A 300-year-old recipe, and the walls are still standing till this day. Back then, there was a segregation between the Chinese traders and the Spanish. However, this house is a representation representation of what happens when you collide both worlds. It's not just a preserved old building, it's a physical record of what convergent culture looked like in colonial Philippines. And mind you, this house has survived massive earthquakes, multiple fires, the revolution against Spain, American bombings in World War II, and it is still standing in 2026. To enter in this ancestral house, the entrance fee will be 100 pesos. However, for students and senior citizens, there will be a discount. You just have to ask at the door. 2 minutes from Yap-Sandiego, we will arrive at our final historical site, which is the Museo de Casa Gorordo. This house was built in the 1850s, originally by a man named Alejandro Reynes, which was later sold to Juan Isidro de Gordo, a wealthy Spanish merchant. But the reason this house matters historically has nothing to do with either of these people. One of the family's descendants, Juan Guardo, became the first ever Filipino bishop of Cebu. And if you don't know the significance of what that means, then you have to listen to this bit. Before Juan Guardo, only Spanish friars held ultimate religious authority in this country. Every church, every priest above a certain rank, every major religious decision, Spain had control over it for 300 years. However, Juan Guardo changed that. The house itself shows you the worlds that made that possible. The Ilustrado class, which were the educated, wealthy Filipino elite, who spent the final decades of Spanish rule building towards self-determination. This is what their lives looked like. Capiche shell windows, detailed wooden ceilings, a manicured courtyard garden in the center. This is not a modest house. This is a statement. Now there are two ways of going back into history. The first one, when you first enter in the building, you have a tablet guide which is very interactive, self-paced, and not the laminated fact sheet taped on a wall. Or the other one, you would pay an additional service fee for someone to tell you the history and the different stages during this colonial period. Now comparing this ancestral house to Yap-Sandiego. Yap-Sandiego was built in 1675 during an era where Chinese merchants were learning to survive inside the colonial system. But with Casa Gorordo, it shows you what it looked like in the 1850s during a time when Filipinos who had moved through that system and were beginning to dismantle it from the inside. Even though this house looks like wealth, what it actually represents is the beginning of the end of colonial rule. And that is all I have for you guys. If you guys want a full breakdown of what we just covered in today's video, here it is. You start your journey off at Heritage Monument, Magellan's Cross, Basilica Minore de Santo Niño, San Pedro Fort, Yap-Sandiego Ancestral House, and last but not least, Casa Gorordo Museo. In total for this trip, I spent 230 pesos for a walk through 500 years of history that shaped this entire country. If you want to DIY this trip, this is how you would do it. You can choose any day except Monday to visit Casa Gorordo because it's closed on that day. You start your journey at Magellan's Cross at 8 a.m. The Sino candle vendors are out, the crowds haven't arrived, which is probably the best time to get good B-roll for the entire trip. Then it's a 10-minute walk to Fort San Pedro. Do it before the midday heat hits. Then grab a habo-habo back to Parian for the Heritage Monument, Yap-Sandiego, and Casa Gorordo in the afternoon. In terms of the time, Casa Gorordo closes at 5 p.m. Don't leave the Parian cluster for last if you start late. In terms of the historical timeline, the story in order goes as 1521 at the cross, 1565 at the fort, 1675 at Yap-Sandiego, 1850s at Casa Gorordo. You can visit them in any sequence, but if you want the history to land, follow the timeline. And as this video comes to a close, I would like to add this as a final remark. Drop a comment which stop hit you the hardest historically. And if you want more content like this of real Cebu, not just a tourist version, subscribe to the channel because I make 1 to 2 videos every single week. And if you are a foreigner that's considering living here long term, watch my channel because I do help you figure out if this is the place that you want to live or simply visit. And as always, like, comment, and share on the channel, and see you guys in my next video.